Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are physicians and leaders who are also trained in coaching, yoga, mindfulness, and integrative medicine.
We are also mothers, spouses, sisters, daughters, aunts, and friends.
In this podcast, we share candid, heart-centered, loving, science-based, thoughtful, and often fun conversations about the challenges life throws at us.
With our collective experience of over 30 years in physician and personal wellness, we reflect and offer pearls of wisdom for navigating life's challenges with more ease.
From parenting, marriages, money scarcity, cancer survivorship, uncertainty, challenges in practicing medicine, we cover it all.
We invite you to refresh your perspective and empower yourself with mindset, mindfulness, and other well-being tools that actually work. A quick reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice.
Welcome to today's episode, when all the what ifs happen. We often think we can't pivot because what if my wife gets cancer or whatever job I pick doesn't work out? And in this episode, we are going to talk about how it can still work, even if all those things happened. So today I am joined by my former colleague and an old friend, Dr. Rakesh Jotwani, who has joined us before on the Mindful Healers podcast. So this is his encore performance. And our last podcast, we talked about his personal journey with mindfulness and lifestyle medicine, and losing weight, and ultimately becoming plant-based and embracing mindfulness, and pivoting in his career from working at the Permanente Medical Group, where we both used to work together, to working for a lifestyle medicine startup. And in that podcast, his main message was that we all have more control over our lives than we think we do, which is apropos for this conversation. So today, our intention is to talk about part 2 of his off the beaten path journey and what happened in the last year, and inspire all of you that even if all the what ifs happen, it can still work out. And in fact, the bad things can turn out to be good things, and they can even give you more motivation and direction in following your passions. So thank you, Rakesh, for joining me today. And do you want to introduce yourself and what you're up to now, and share a bit of your journey since last year?
Sure. Well, first, let me just thank you for welcoming me back. It's really welcoming. And I have to start I said it in the last episode, but so much gratitude for you were the one who first introduced me to this concept of doing things in our power to improve our experience of our lives. And like showing gratitude and being present in the moment and showing ourselves compassion. And so much is sprung from that anyway. So I want to thank you again for that. And
thank you for acknowledging it. It's something we were talking about actually before we started recording. I think this idea of knowing the impact of what we do and hearing other people acknowledge it feels very validating. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I was on your show about a year ago. And I think that day, or maybe right before that, I had learned that the startup I was working for, you and I worked for the same medical group. You were there for how many years, Jessie?
18.
18, yeah. And I was there for almost 12. And then I went to go work at a startup, lifestyle medicine focused startup. Now, I wasn't naive, nor were the people, close to me in my life who said, oh, this is a sure bet if you go work at this startup. I didn't necessarily expect that it was about 10 months in. No, it was about 9 months in. The whole job lasted 10 months. It was about 9 months in that they informed us that they had lost funding. Uh, the original investment, the investors decided, and then there were changes in the economy, always changes in the economy, but I guess, everything that's happened the last couple of years, interest rates have gone up and money is not as omnipresent and abundant for these startups. And so the investors sort of said, let's cut our losses. And so we were given a month notice. And that was just sort of like, whoa, like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What do I do now? Anyone in that situation, well, I don't know. What do you think? Like, would be faced with this sort of,
Well, I work with lots of people who leave one job and then they try something else and it doesn't turn out like they thought.
yeah, right.
And so I think the mindset work there is like, well, this is not what I was expecting. And I'm thinking, but what's in your control? We all have more control over our lives than we think we do. I think when we grow up in medicine, our belief is sort of that things are supposed to go this way. And if we do X, then Y will happen. And when we pivot to this entrepreneurial journey or more authentic, aligned, sort of private practice, independent journey, it's not as predictable.
Yeah.
It's a lot more free, but not as predictable. And
Yeah.
so I would say I have a son who works for a startup. Like, it's not unexpected that startups don't get whatever next round of funding or whatever it is. And it may not have anything to do with whether it's a great place or the idea is good. I think that's very hard for us in medicine because it could be an amazing place and we'll have amazing people and be an amazing idea. And for some other reason, it's not going to come to fruition.
Right. Yes, that's very well said. And I think for me, though, and most people would ask the question, should I go back to what I was doing before? And it was an easy answer for me. And I would say one doesn't leave that job after 18 years or 12 years or willy-nilly. Like, it's a big decision. It's a big deal. And so one of the things I'm most grateful for was that opportunity to go work at that startup, even though it lasted for 9 months, 10 months. It was one of the things that gave me the confidence to take that leap.
Yeah. I often talk about it as it was your stepping stone, right? You might not have jumped without it.
Right.
But having it there allowed you to grow into the person you became.
Right.
Now does lifestyle medicine on your own.
Yeah. Yes.
For example, without that experience, it might have been, I say this with no judgment, but too big of a jump, right?
I had contemplated that jump a couple of years, a year before that. So a year before that, I decided, okay, I'm going to leave hospital medicine. I had worked in the hospital for 11 years. That is not an alignment. That is very downstream from where and when I want to connect and reach with people. And so I thought about jumping, but I didn't have a startup opportunity. The suggestion to go work in the same organization, but in primary care, was suggested to me. And you worked in primary care for years. It very quickly became obvious that it wasn't how I wanted to practice.
Wasn't a fit. It
wasn't. Yeah. I wasn't a fit. Exactly. I realized that, I think, very, very quickly. It took me about
actually had two stepping stones.
Yeah.
Right? Because you went from hospital medicine to primary care and then to this startup. Well, and now you're on your third step. And I think for our listeners to understand that that's actually pretty common, right?
Yes.
And even if you look at my journey, what I do now is not really, parts of it are what I started out doing, but it's a constant growth and evolution.
Yeah. I looked at it like I could go back to working in the hospital. And in my head, I thought, I'm good at that. I know how to do that. But then there is part of me every day, all the time, that would be feeling like I wasn't doing what I should be doing, what I was meant to be doing.
And
And
honestly, that's how I got here too. I felt every day like I wasn't doing, not that I had been doing what I was meant to do, but
right,
then we outgrow it, graduate, evolve, become someone new over time, which as human beings is actually what we're supposed to do over time. And then it becomes out of alignment. I think many people also look back and say, oh, why did I waste all that time as a hospitalist? Or why did I do all of that?
oh,
But it's
right,
all part of you. And even the startup was part of you.
right, right. And well, I mean, on the flip side of that, there is some like not listening to that voice.
Yeah.
I was probably hearing that voice.
Mhm.
I know I was, and then the pandemic came and I sort of put that voice away. I said, now's not a good time. But it just never went away, just never went away. And then at some point, so when I was making the decision, I was like, well, I had enough awareness to realize that I can't go back to that.
Okay.
And so the other thing I realized at the startup was that I loved doing that work. In fact, I felt like I was meant to do that work. If there's a feeling like that,
Yeah.
I was running group medical visits. I was helping people reverse chronic disease. I was having longer visits with patients and developing relationships with them over time and seeing the changes they make in their life and how it affected not just them, but all the other people in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, how can I not do this? And at some point you say, okay, well, it would be great if I could go work somewhere where this is what I could do. And they figured out all the legal
Yeah.
licensing, the the financials,
Yeah.
and I can just do this work. That was almost like a dream because that's what it felt like at the startup. Um, but if it's important, it was so important to me. I said, I got to figure out, I have to figure out how to do this.
What your words, how can I not do this? It's just exactly my journey. It's so
Mm,
interesting. And I think many people are in medicine and they just want to run away from medicine. And that is not a path towards success in my coaching experience. But
sure,
and sometimes we need to pause to pivot, that comes up a lot. But
sure.
for some people like you and I here, it's this idea, I have something I can't not do because it's so important to me. And I think we all have that within us. It's a matter of finding it. And some people find it while they're still working in another job. Some people have to pause to find it. And then sometimes things in life, I think, reinforce it and help us to sort of double down on this
Mm,
desire and
mm.
passion that we have.
Let me ask you one question. One thing
Yeah.
that comes to mind is a barrier maybe for people to do this is you say I want to create something. I want to create, and I create a business where I'm doing virtual lifestyle care. That's like climbing up a new ladder. But
Yeah.
in order to climb up a new ladder, you have to climb down the ladder you're on.
Mm.
And I think people have a hard time with that because climbing down the ladder, it has real ramifications, it has real financial ramifications, but it also has perception ramifications. Like my perception is my identity has become being this person who has this position or this role. Well, I have to step down from that ladder if I want to create something new, if I want to go and
That's interesting. For me, I didn't feel like it was stepping down, it was stepping off. So, like taking a right turn rather than continuing on the same turn. But I will say that I think that belief came to me through my own coaching, that I didn't have that belief before I switched. But what gave me the courage to switch was actually owning that I wasn't stepping down. I was stepping into what I was meant to do.
Mm.
And that I was bringing all of me with me. So in my case, I was bringing not just my pediatrician version of me who works with children and families and understands relationships and all of that, but it was also the department chief leader of me was also coming, so she knew how to run stuff. She knew something about financials. She knew
Yeah,
about,
yeah, yeah.
a little bit about business from even being a department chief, and definitely a lot about leadership. And I had done wellness leadership, so all of that was coming with me. All of my coach training was coming with me.
Yeah,
But that was a lot of work on an intentional mindset, and it
yeah.
was when I stepped into that I had the courage actually to make the shift. And
Mhm.
if I think back, to January 2020 when I was making this decision, not knowing COVID was coming, by the way, that was what gave me the strength. I was like, wow, I actually am bringing all of this stuff. Like, how crazy. And I'm so well prepared. In fact, there's probably no one else who's more prepared. And I would say that that's true for you too in your lifestyle medicine journey.
Well, I mean, when you were saying what you were just saying, I mean, I love that because I have written this on my bathroom mirror. It says, pick yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think I was waiting and waiting for somebody to pick me.
Yeah.
And I'm so good at this. I add so much value to people's lives when I do this. How could you not pick me? And it wasn't until I embraced that, really embraced that, I had to pick myself. And what does picking myself look like?
Yeah.
It means betting on myself. It means, doing something new and different and scary and believing that I'm going to figure it out and make it work
Yeah.
because I have to. I was meant to.
Yeah.
There's
I
no other
almost
way.
wonder if the work that you did when you initially left TPMG, for example, that you almost, even when the startup wasn't the path, the long-term path, you'd already done that work. So it was not
Yeah.
really even a question. Because I do hear from people like, well, this didn't work. Maybe I have to go back. And yes, it floats into your mind. I remember when COVID came, I was like, oh, like maybe I'm supposed to be going back. But once you've already done all of that mindset work and really connected to sort of your heart and what you're meant to be doing, it's impossible to just go backwards in the same direction. You're not the same person.
I think that was true for me. I think my wife, um, she was asking that question. She was like, "Oh, have you thought about what you're gonna do?"
Mhm.
And she wasn't maybe as sold on the idea of me
Yeah.
creating something, starting something new.
And often our spouses aren't. I had originally told this story to myself that my husband was totally on board, but more recently he said, I thought you were crazy. He's like, I love you and I believe in you. And you usually are like very rational. So I decided to trust you. But actually, I kind of thought you were crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so it's funny. So I think my kids really did believe in me, but they didn't have as much at stake. They did actually, but weren't aware of it. How's that? But I think it's just funny to realize. So then tell everyone here, what happened? The startup goes
Yeah.
under. You're
Right.
deciding you're going to move forward on your
Yeah.
own. And
Yeah.
now I know that your wife is like 50-50 on
50.
board. What do you
Yeah.
think? Like she loves you and
Right.
she's going to not get in your way and she's a little nervous.
Yes, that's right. And then a couple things happened. We went on this family trip. My dad turned 80 and he wanted to take the whole family on a Alaskan cruise. And so we went for a week. We were just all together as a big family. Right before we left, my wife she had gone just a couple months before that to her OB-GYN, and there was a lump felt on her exam.
Mhm.
Um, and then they ended up getting mammography that didn't show up. And so then she ended up getting an ultrasound right before we left, and they did biopsy. But the ultrasound, the guy said, oh, the ultrasonographer, and I think ultimately even the radiologist came out because they biopsied it. he said, it doesn't look concerning.
Mhm.
So go enjoy your trip. And she specifically said, so don't contact me until I get back. So we had a nice trip that week. And then the day after we got back, that morning, she got a call. And she came to my office. I was working at the startup and still finishing up basically. I had a few weeks left. Um, and she had gotten this news that it was cancerous, that the biopsy was cancer. And she's how old's my wife is 41. She was 40.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was 40. Yeah. She turned 41 after that. So really young. She's been vegetarian her whole life. She's a runner.
Mhm.
She's also a doctor. She's a kidney specialist. And whoa, like what? Like I was in shock, disbelief, and then very quickly was just living in, I mean, didn't stay there, but I'll tell you right away, I have 3 kids. I have a 12, a 10, and an 8-year-old. And I started thinking about all the worst possible scenarios.
Of
I
course.
started imagining, yeah, that's what we do, right? I started imagining being this single father and um, before we even knew anything, right? I'm just like catastrophizing. And then I had to see that
Mhm.
really quickly. I had to kind of see that. And I luckily also have really close people in my life I could talk to. Um, and, and, and my wife was probably the biggest positive impact on me throughout all this. Not the first day or the second day she got the news, but very quickly she decided she wasn't going to live in a space where she felt like a victim
Mhm.
and she felt that this was this terrible thing that is happening to her. She decided she was going to live in a space of positivity where she was going to focus on um, her gratitude and all the good things that she had and all the opportunities she had going forward. And we all fed off of that. I don't know what I would have done if she wasn't. I was in a really I was doing regular meditation. I was having conversations with people. I was going on runs. I was still feeling very, very overwhelmed.
Mhm. And so, how did her diagnosis? Because you had another reason here, and just go back,
Yeah.
like you need
Right.
steady security.
Right.
How did her diagnosis shift what you ultimately decided to do?
Can I say first it shifted in her, like
Yeah.
it was days after that we had a conversation again because it was the week actually she got the diagnosis. Now I remember the week she got the diagnosis was my last week of actually
Of course.
but I couldn't imagine, first of all, a better time to not have professional
Okay.
responsibility.
Okay.
I say that now looking back,
Yeah.
right? But my kids were in school. My wife actually then she took leave, so we were both at home. Um, I think that was one of the ways that I was able to feel really confident about the decision moving forward because I had a lot of conversations with her. And her whole, she was like 50-50 before. Very quickly, she said, you know what? Like, nothing in this life is guaranteed.
Hmm.
And if, and I know, we know this is what you should be doing. So she came around. I think her diagnosis made her shifted the way she was looking at our choices, our life, how we spend our time. And it didn't take long to convince me. When I had her buy-in, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I already knew it.
Yeah.
There was no conflict in me. So that was in August. Since then, I have been. So it was about a year ago. Yeah, it took me, several months to get my corporation set up and learn exactly the laws that I'm licensed because of that startup. I'm licensed in 10 states.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, so
See,
not,
how helpful was that?
yeah, right. I mean, now it's a question, do I want to maintain all those licenses? They're going to coming, some of them are coming due this year, next year. Some of them I'm maintaining Texas and Florida. I have patients there now. You know, when before that would have baffled my mind. Like, how could I have a
Yeah.
patient with someone who's a now I have relationships and clients and patients all over. So
Yeah.
there's been a lot of growth, but you go ahead. Yeah.
No, so you decided to go all in.
Yes.
And so tell us what's happened since going all in. You got your corporation.
Yeah, I started my services in November of last year. Um, I knew I wanted to lead groups because I was doing that.
Mhm.
I also knew that one of the, I think, reasons the startup failed is because we have such a broken insurance system.
Yeah.
And it became increasingly clear that they weren't getting consistently reimbursed for what we were doing. We were providing group medical visits to address chronic conditions. Um, and anyway, I on my own said that whole startup had a whole team of people that were working on billing. And I said, I on my own, how am I going to do that? So I withdrawn myself from that system. I do a membership based system, and
Cash pay,
with
though. People
yeah,
pay out of
yeah,
pocket. Yeah.
people pay out of pocket, but it's very transparent pricing, and there's different levels. Because I run health education groups, so some of my clients are just in my health education groups. I don't have necessarily a doctor-patient relationship with them, and that's actually exactly what they need. Like they need the support and accountability that comes from being in a group of like-minded individuals. I run a plant-based. They're called tribes, Jessie. So
Oh, I
they're
love it.
yeah, so tribes, because what is a tribe? A tribe is your community, the people that you surround yourself with who are helping you become that version of yourself or be that version of yourself that you're trying to be.
I just want to give you a window back to yourself that you just described how you did all of this in your own transition, which was came from the benefit of your tribe. You talked
Uh,
about your friends supporting you.
yeah,
I'm going to put your mindfulness and your plant-based eating in part of your tribe too. These are
yeah,
sort of, you
yeah,
supported yourself well. And when your wife joined in the tribe,
yeah,
and probably your children too, because I know they
yeah.
all have to eat plant-based because if both their parents are, they do too, right? But that it was your tribe, and even
Mm,
the people potentially worked in the startup. And I'm going to
mm,
say some of your people from your former life, like me, right? We're all in a tribe
mm,
supporting you. And when you
mm,
had that tribe, that allowed you to change. And you were just
mm,
describing how you've created these tribes for your
mm,
patients. And
mm.
the full more circle there is that I actually have a group called Transition Well, which is, I've never called it a tribe before, but that's really what it is. It's sort of a
Yeah,
group of people coming together on a similar journey. All their journeys are different. They're building different businesses or leaving or changing jobs, but they're all going through change, and we need a
yeah,
tribe. And yet
yeah,
our culture does not, it promotes independence, push through, do it yourself, rather
yeah.
than create a supportive and loving and kind environment, which
That's
we
right.
know helps when you're trying to change your diet and exercise and
That's
lifestyle.
right. That's it. 100%. There's an African proverb, and I put it on the bottom of all my emails. If you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
That's I do, and I know that from my own life. We were talking about how both of us have partners for our podcast, and that we both. I always say it. I don't do we don't do every episode together, but that's the reason that has pulled me forward. My partner has pulled me forward in so many, and I can think about that in so many other examples in my life. Thank you for calling that out. Yeah, that is true. The power of my tribe, which
Yeah.
has allowed me, really buttressed me to be able to be in this position and do this.
And
Yeah.
I just want to call out, because a lot of people who listen to this podcast are thinking about making big changes in their life. That at least when I was at TPMG, and I'm certain for you too, that we saw as our tribe, and that was like the only tribe. And so when you left, you felt like, wow, I'm just going off on my own. I'm no longer part of
Mm,
the tribe. And yet
Yeah.
the work was to recreate a tribe,
Yeah.
create a different tribe. And
Yeah.
some of the people from your old tribe are still around, like me.
Yeah. Right.
Right. I'm sure there's others, but then you built a whole new tribe, and then you
Oh
kind of
my God.
are
Yeah.
constantly rearranging or
And
modifying your tribe.
new people are coming in. And this is where synchronicity, and when you put out this energy in the universe,
Yeah.
then these are the things, these are the people that start coming into your life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for sure. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I run tribes. I run a plant-based tribe. It's a heart health tribe.
Mhm.
And then more recently I started, and this one I think it's really, I mean, they're all important to me, but it's a men's tribe. And I don't know too many spaces men have who are on a health journey and trying to be the best version of themselves, where there's a doctor who's leading them to create a space where there's vulnerability, where they can be honest about their current situation and where they're trying to go, and have other people that can share in that journey.
I'm so
So,
interested in what you just said, actually. It's a little bit of a divergence, but very important, which is I also see generally in the coaching and wellness world, there's about, I don't know, 90% more opportunities for women to engage and to have support and to be vulnerable.
mm,
And that's really the accepted way of doing it. And I find that, I do work with some men and they need this work just as much. And
sure.
I'm the mom of three males and I only have males in my life pretty much. And I know that this work is so important. And so the ability to create a space, whether it's health related, mindset related, I'm very curious, how do we do that? And what
Mm.
brings men into it, aside from the fact that you're a male, which may help, but I'm not even sure that for men that matters as much. It's more the intention of the space.
Well, one thing I'll say, and I don't know if this is broadly true for everyone right now, but a lot of the men who I have 5 men in the group, but the men I've also met with other men, like broadly speaking, there's a lot of men who are, and I was like this. I think my story resonates with a lot of people, where I was living a life where, like, on paper, I had everything I had sort of
Mm-hmm.
aspired to achieve in life. I had a job and family, and like was financially secure. And yet, what you asked me, I would tell you I'm unhappy, or is certainly acting that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there were feelings of anger and resentment that would sort of permeate in my life. And it's like, well, so where is that disconnect coming from? So that's what I encounter. I encounter people who see that they realize that they're experiencing life that way, but they also realize that other people, uh, that it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be that way. So it's really like people questioning, like, well, why am I unhappy, and how might I live differently? Maybe they don't come with that, but as we're talking, like that's sort of
Mm-hmm.
the realization I'm often hearing.
Interesting. So, what lessons do you think would be helpful to share with people who are
Uh,
potentially stuck on this idea of, well, what if what I do doesn't work out? What if somebody I love gets
yeah.
sick? What if, it just doesn't work out the way I thought? How do we
Can I just
forward?
first say, like, I want to, I have to call out, like, I have the ability to do this.
Yeah.
One, I'm not like straight out of school, so I don't have a bunch of student debt, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
right. So
Timing. Yeah, timing.
timing is a big part of it. Are you in a position financially where you can take, because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to start something new, you're not going to get your current salary.
Well, and I do think we often say, like, oh, well, you're lucky. But I would also say that both you and I put in many, many years of hard work to
Right.
end up in the spaces that we did. And so we should, in medicine, we're always like, oh, I should just be grateful. I'm like, well, you also can plan to set yourself up well so that
Yeah.
if you want to pivot at some point,
You have
you
that.
have been cautious and thoughtful and set yourself up to be able to do that. I think there's this whole movement of like, set yourself up for, I don't know what it is, financial freedom or whatever. But my thing is,
Fire.
be thoughtful. Yes, be thoughtful and recognize that you know, you deserve to live a healthy, important life. And actually doing something like this gets you much farther away from fire, but you might
Yeah.
not need it because you enjoy what you do.
Do you know, Jessie, do you know, I bet you know Yashoda
Yeah.
Bhaskar?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
I do.
okay. Right.
Yeah.
And we worked together.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
was on my podcast, and we talked to her about this, and she said, you know, retirement is such a loaded word, but really what people want is the decision, the freedom to be able to decide how they spend their time. And so then I look at it like that now.
You
Now
have that
I'm
already.
right. So then it's like, well, okay, if I'm already doing that, and you have to get past some limiting beliefs, and you have to get past some beliefs like, I think your wife having a cancer diagnosis helps you like
Yeah.
stop
Yeah.
thinking like, when I turn 65, I'll be able to do X. It's like, there may not be a 65.
Yeah.
Stop thinking about what's going to happen 20 years from now.
Mhm.
That's, I think, the biggest thing, the biggest shift was like, okay, well, we're financially sound, like, for the near future, so I have a little bit of time and space. I tell myself things like, I can always go back to working on the hospital, but that's not the plan or the intention.
Yeah.
And so, but you sometimes say those things even out loud, just to sort of quell any, it's
Right.
like, well, let me figure this out. Yeah, but so that's one, to have the space, the ability to do it. But sometimes it's really, you do have the ability. You have a perception that it's not the responsible thing to do, or you shouldn't be doing it. Well, no, I mean,
You have no idea how it will turn out.
yeah, you have no idea how it'll turn out. And being unhappy for the next 20 years is not the responsible thing to do. It's not what's best for your family. It's not what's best for society, actually.
So I think your message here is it's worth it, because being unhappy is not a viable plan. Not
Yeah.
living your life to its fullest and not honestly contributing to the world in the way that you are meant to.
Right.
And therefore, while it does involve risk, it also involves benefit and joy and meaning and fulfillment.
And here's the other thing I'll say is, I'm like a year into this journey, and I know way more than I knew a year ago. And I'm running,
Mm-hmm.
3 groups, and have, more patients than I had 6 months ago, and more patients than I had 3 months before that. And I'm again lucky that I can kind of let things
Yeah.
slowly ramp up as I learn, but I'm also like building so many layers of like skills and foundation, so that whatever I do, because
Yeah.
what I'm doing now may not exist in for the same iteration like a year from now or 5 years from now. Something else may change, something else may happen.
Yeah.
Part of making that leap and going on this path is being open to the opportunity and the unexpected, and how life might unfold. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
of course, yeah, that's the same sort of
Well, and I think it's the beauty of
journey
it.
you've
And
been on.
so what I'm hearing you say too is that when those what ifs happen, they actually help direct you to something that's even more meaningful. And they sort of helped you have more clarity about what was next. And
That's right.
as you use the word, doubling down on what was most important to you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
I think that's a good spot to end our conversation today. And I hope that this has been inspiring to people who are listening. And I will put Rakesh's information in the show notes. And if anyone has patients who might need lifestyle medicine in states that he works in, you can.
Or yourself. I have a
Or
lot of
yourself.
I have several of my patients are physicians.
Absolutely. And if you want to work on lifestyle medicine,
Yeah.
I highly recommend him. He lives what he teaches and shares. So all of that will be in the show notes for you to find out more. And if any of you are interested in making your own transitions and want to join me for a transition while this fall, now's the time. So reach out, and I will put the information about that in the show notes too. So Rakesh, thank you so much for joining me. Any final advice you want to share with anybody listening?
Yeah, pick yourself. Pick yourself. Yeah, because you're worth it. And the truth is, somebody else may or may not pick you. It doesn't matter when you pick yourself.
Pick yourself.
Thanks so much for joining us.
We encourage you to dive into the show notes for each episode for more learnings and resources.
We also invite you to take a listen to the many other Mindful Healers podcast episodes, and please share the podcast far and wide with colleagues, friends, and family.
If our message and approach resonate with you, we would love to work with you.
When you listen to a podcast, you consume information, but when you work with us, you can actually practice and change.
We offer coaching and mindfulness experiences, talks, workshops, retreats, and more. Connect with us at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
The content of this podcast is not medical or life advice. We invite you to participate in the mindful moments we offer at the end of most of our podcasts, but please only do so safely.